All right, today what we're going to cover today is essential closed guard, which is going to be really basic. The reason we're doing this is because we already have an excellent Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu teacher who does a lot of basic open guard. So this is going to give the members of our gym something different to cover, something different to look at, and something that's very essential to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. When we're dealing with closed guard, nobody's going to do exactly the same thing. Posture is going to be different. The way my opponent reacts is going to be different. The way I react is going to be different. So what's important is that we try to look at all those things and try to cover all those things. So that's what I'm going to get into right now and try to cover at least the 2 or 3 most basic things that you're going to see when somebody's in your closed guard. Now, what we have here is Charles. He's a big guy. So he's going to do a couple, there's a couple things he can do, and this is what I want to look at. If Charles sits back like this is what we call back posture, which is really good, especially if we're wearing a gi. There's different ways that I need to attack that, and we'll go through those little by little. But most importantly, this is one good posture that he can do. Another one, let's think about if Charles was a wrestler. Big guys and wrestlers both do this. Sometimes they will put their hand on my chest and really try to rough me up right here and put a lot of pressure up top. So it's another thing I need to look at. And then lastly, besides backwards and this way, is he might stand up. So go ahead and stand up. So there you go. So he may stand up here. So that's another thing I need to look at. I have to have things to do from each one of these positions. So if I'm going to cover all these positions, I need to look at some of the different things that I'll do right off the bat, besides moves. It's important that I can combat his posture, react to it, and have submissions to go from there, submissions and sweeps. So the first thing I want to look at is if he's in a backwards posture, which he should be in the gi, how I would react to that. So if he's sitting back, the most common thing that most people do is they will open the collar, slide their hand in deep, and try to attack his posture from there. When my hand's inside here, I can pull him down, and most importantly, I have him set up for various sweeps or chokes and sweeps that I can go through later. Also, I can attack wrist control here. I can look and see what he's doing, hold his wrists, hold his hands. If it's no gi, I can hold in here. If it's gi, I'll hold his sleeves here. Okay. Most things are all important because of things that I'm going to do later. For example, if I was holding his wrist here and he started to pass guard, I could always go into open guard. So I have to have my plan already set up. Okay. Then lastly, if he's controlling my chest like a wrestler, I need to make sure that he doesn't get to hold my head. I don't want him to get to this part. Okay. Nothing terrible is going to happen, but he's big. I don't want him to smash me. I don't want him to make it hard for me to breathe. So I would rather keep his arm here so that I can deal with things from here that are a lot easier to deal with. However, even if he does get control of my back of the head here, we'll go over some things that we can do from here. Okay? All right, so the first thing we're going to cover here is a basic triangle. It's something you use from closed guard often. But since we're doing the basics, I'm not going to go through advanced setups or a lot of different setups. I'm just going to do like a real basic version of a triangle. Especially this is basically used for 2 new people. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get right into it. If Justin's going to come in my guard here. Okay, so a lot of times, like I said, this guy's posture is going to be back here, and he's going to be trying to pass my guard. So a lot of times when people do that, they'll take one of their hands, let's say this one, and he's trying to push down my leg. And sometimes, besides this, you'll even run into a guy that will actually slide his hand through the middle here and try to break your leg like that. So most people that do that obviously are new. But however, even I roll with some, or compete with some guys that are good, and they do the same thing because they already know they got their counter set up. So you'll run into that no matter the level of the competition. So let's say that the guy either has his hands back or he's shooting through here. So Justin's going to do that. So when this happens, we're going to go for a basic triangle. So what I want to do is get this leg over his head. So the best way to do that is to control this arm to make sure that when I open his legs, or open my legs, that he's not going to try to force them down. For example, if I didn't control this arm and I open my legs to go for a triangle, a lot of times the guy will flare his elbows out, okay, and that's going to help him pass guard. So I really don't want to have that happen, obviously. So the second that this hand goes here, what I'm going to do is control this arm, slide his hand back, set my opposite foot on his hip to lift myself up, slide this knee on his head, and if you notice, I immediately try to create an angle. Right now I'm at a 45-degree angle, which is fine. But the better the angle is, the easier it is to get to triangle, especially if you don't have long legs like myself. So if I can get as close to a 90-degree angle as possible, the easier the move's going to be. Okay? So now that I have the back of my calf and the back of his neck, I'm going to slide my leg over, triangle my legs, and bring my heel to my butt, keeping my toes pressed up, and finish with a triangle. Okay. All right, so same version, just so you can see the foot better on this side. So if I'm in closed guard, he slides this arm back. Okay, what I'm going to do again is control this arm, slide this hand through. This foot comes to that hip. What I'm doing here is that I want to make sure that when I get the triangle, that not just my legs here. I want to make sure that my knee is directly on the back of his head. This is what's going to choke him. So I'm pushing this up, making sure my leg is on the back of his head. No space on this side. Coming on this side, making it as tight as I possibly can. Again, flexing my feet up, trying to bring my heel to my butt. Squeeze up my muscles. I should tap them there. If I don't, we can always finish kind of a backwards angle and just go through the motion. Okay. So that's your basic triangle. Okay, now the other basic move that we can do from closed guard is an armbar. The thing is with an armbar, there's various ways you can do them. Both have pros and cons. Actually, I'm going to do 3 different arm bars, so all 3 have pros and cons. Those pretty much are dependent on his posture as well. I can do any of the arm bars any different way, but I'm going to have more success if I attack the correct arm bar during the correct version of his posture. So let's go through that real quick. As we started with, we talked about a wrestler position or posture he had. That'd be more down, whether it's here, okay, or as I said, sometimes they're able to get their arm across here and attack this way. Now, a popular thing that wrestlers do, or even, you don't have to be a wrestler, people do when they're grappling no-gi or MMA, is they go for a thing called a can opener, which would mean you bring both arms behind my head, pull my neck up, and try to get a neck crank on my head here. The thing with that is we have to know the counters to that, how to get out of that. So a basic thing to do for an armbar there is as soon as he counters here, I'm going to pick a side. So let's say that I'm going to pick this armbar. Well, that means this opposite arm is going to slide underneath his thigh. I'm going to release my hips and come around for the armbar. Okay? So same thing on this side. So let's say he goes for a neck crank. The second he does that, I'm going to grab him right here at his bicep. Opposite arm goes underneath the thigh. What this does is allow me to release my hips. So I bring the near side leg up. That way my hips fully release. Bring the back side around and over his head. Okay. So at this point, I can tap him out here, or I continue with the move, tap him out here. So this is what I call a basic armbar underneath the thigh. So otherwise, we would just call it underneath the thigh armbar. So like I said, I can do this same armbar even if he's right here. I could just go underneath the thigh. Okay, so he doesn't necessarily have to go behind my head, but it's a good cue point to do that armbar. And another thing about doing certain arm bars is we shouldn't go for just one single move. We should go for moves that set up other moves. So, for example, if I went for this underneath the thigh arm bar, and I have the arm bar right here. However, if he was blocking here behind my head grab, and I'm unable to get this arm bar, I can release, follow through here with what we call a flower sweep. Okay, and then from here I can take mount or finish the arm bar. This is a move I'll go through in a little bit, but I want to just show you like each arm bar sets up a different thing. That's why we have different arm bars. So again, another arm bar that we might do, I can do from any position. He could be postured back or he could be here, is what we call a 5-point arm bar. Okay, and when I do this arm bar, what I want to do is grab his arm here, same side, bring up same side leg, and that again is going to allow me to release my hips. That's the most important part. So usually we count the steps. I'm not really going to count the steps. We're just going to call it a 5-point arm bar. So I grab here, I release the back leg and turn my hips. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is switch my grips, follow through here, and finish with the arm bar. Again, it's called a 5-point arm bar. Now I can grab the same side or I can opposite grip. Sometimes, a lot of times, or not sometimes, but a lot of times what people do is grab the opposite hip or opposite arm here, release here, release here. And the advantage of doing it this side instead of the same side grab is when I grab opposite side here, is if he ducks his head at this point here so that it's harder for me to get the arm bar, I'm able to push his head away and finish with the same arm bar. Okay?
So this is what we call a 5-point armbar, and this, again, is dependent upon his posture. It also depends on other things. I might set up other things off of this move or be going for another move to get this armbar. So that's why we have different armbars. And the third is the armbar that I like to do most. Let's say that he's postured really far back. His elbow's not here, so he thinks that he's completely safe, which for the most part he is. The thing on an armbar is I just need to get my hips free. That's why under the thigh armbar, we're releasing our hips. On this one, I'm using on the 5-point armbar, I'm using my leg to release my hips. And on this version of the armbar, what I'm going to do to release my hips is use my hands. Okay, so my hips are completely free. That means I can do an armbar. So I'm going to switch my grip to here, switch grip to here. Okay, so how I release my hips on this version of the armbar is once I cross grab at the tricep of the arm here. Again, if he has a gi, I'll just grab some cloth. If it's no gi, grab right behind the tricep so he can't remove his arm. I go immediately to his shoulder, but at the same time, I move my upper body. That allows my hips to come free. So now that I'm at a pretty good angle, when I release my legs, I'll bring the first one to his armpit and the next one straight around. And again, finish the armbar. So the good thing about this armbar is it's unexpected. It's a little bit faster, and it again allows me to get into another game. For example, if I went for this armbar, went here, and he started countering right away, like he put his head down, I didn't feel like I was going to get it, I can go into a whole nother different version of a closed guard, and I would have 5-10 moves from here. So, as you can see from each armbar, the 3 different armbars that we did, we have different guard games and different submissions that we can do. So that's why all 3 armbars are important, and all 3 armbars will be used. So basically, there's our armbar game. All right, so one of the first things we're going to cover from closed guard, now that we're getting away from some of the basic moves, is what a wrestler would do, or the wrestler posture, which basically means a big guy, or a wrestler, obviously, that gets inside your guard and has a low posture, and they're riding heavy on you, trying to put some pressure on you, trying to make it difficult for you to breathe, and or messing with your head instead of having a back posture. So that's what we're going to cover right now. So the first thing, we've already talked about it a little bit, but we're going to talk about the can opener. And the reason people do that, for one, like I said, is they can submit you. It's a cervical lock or a neck crank. And the other is just to open your guard. A lot of people do this no-gi, especially MMA. They will put you in what we call a can opener because I have to alleviate the pressure. I open my legs. That allows him to pass guard. So let's kind of get into that. What I want to do, as he brings his arms here, before my head gets up to here, because that starts isolating my hips and making it difficult to move, the second he grabs my head, that's when I want to go for the armbar that we already talked about. So he's grabbed my head. I want to slide my arm underneath his thigh, release my hips, and come around for the armbar. So now that we went through the armbar that we had previously went over, there's one more thing you can do. As I said, at a certain point, you may get into the lock and you're unable to release your hips, or it actually hurts, you're not able to do that. So if he gets me in the can opener, and I'm unable to release my hips, okay, I can't get out, it's hurting. At this point, what I want to do is go ahead and pretty much do what he wants me to do. So I'm going to go ahead and put my hands on the ground backwards so that I can get up on my elbows, do a sit-up, release my legs, and sit back, okay? At this point, I'm completely safe. I can hurry up, right back to guard. If he does it again, I can do the same thing. So what happens is I'm releasing my legs and alleviating the pressure. Now, like I said, I am doing what he wanted. He's giving me some pressure to open his guard. On the other hand, I'm not submitting. I'm not tapping out. There are people that tap out for this move quite often because I'm assuming they don't know that they can just release their legs and sit back. You can do that, and that is a good option. Okay, so again, I know that you're giving him what he wants, but at other point, if you don't, you'll get submitted. Okay, besides the can opener, another thing that he will do as a big guy or a wrestler is put his hand on the chest or on the neck, as we talked about. The 2 reasons, or the multiple reasons that he might do this is, again, to put pressure on me, to make it hard to breathe, or some people will actually put their hand on the shoulder like he has here, and apply their forearm across the throat, and or tripod up, or just put a lot of pressure here. We call this a bully choke. In any event, even if I get out of it, it's annoying, it's not good. I don't want to be right here, Okay, so the second that he puts his arm across here, I need to get into a different set of moves and get out of this position. So the first thing that you always try when somebody comes right here is you wrap the back of their head. Okay, that way I keep his posture down, keep control of him. I'm going to put this hand on the back of his elbow or tricep, and then I'm going to remove my hips that way. Okay, if I don't remove my hips, let's say that I just go here, pop his elbow. For one thing, it's hard to pop his elbow because he's going to be holding real tight. So when I just go here, it moves a little bit, but he can still apply pressure in a choke. So when I remove my hips or slide them to the side, it also allows me to get out of the way of this arm and attack him at a different angle. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab the back of his head. As I put pressure on his elbow or tricep here, I'm going to release my guard and shoot my hips that way towards his arm. So again, we're here, here. At this point, what I'm going to do is make sure my head is tight, my chest is tight, because if I'm not, it will be very easy for him to remove his arm, okay? And then we didn't accomplish anything. Yeah, I didn't get choked, but he's just going to do the same thing. So at this point, I want to stay tight with my head, keep it to the side, keep my chest here, okay? Then what I'm going to do is slide this part of my arm, the bony part of your arm, so that I can get good pressure on the side of his neck, up. I'm going to grab my bicep here and apply basically a rear naked choke to the front of his body. But the only difference is I'm going to try to get this arm to the back of my head. All these things depend on the size of your opponent. So when I come here and here, when I get to the back of my head, I'm going to apply the choke here. All right? If he was a smaller opponent, I would try to get this hand as far back in my shoulder as I could, and this hand back of my neck, more or less like this. Okay? So it all depends on the size of your opponent. So again, what we're going to do here is if he's applying this posture, which we call the wrestler posture, I'm going to go to the back of his head, back of his tricep, remove my hips, keep everything tight, and apply the choke. Okay? So we'll do the same move for a couple different angles, just so you can see. So we're going to switch. Okay. Again, he's applying the wrestler posture or choke. So hand back of the head to the tricep, release the guard, up, stay tight, apply choke. Okay, one more angle from this side so you can see my hips. So the hand goes back here to the tricep, release the guard. As I push, my hips bounce to the sides. Okay, now that I'm on the side, apply the choke. Okay, now on that same set of moves here, the thing is, not everything's 100%, especially considering the size. Charles is a big guy, got wide shoulders. I have long arms, so I have an equal advantage that he has. I'm able to get my arms around his neck, his big torso. However, if you don't have long arms, this move's not going to be 100%. So, of course, you want to do the same thing. You don't want to get choked. You want to get rid of them, but at the end, we're going to have to change it a little bit. So, as I come here, slide him off, I go for the choke, realize either my arms are not long enough or it's just not working. What I want to do at this position, in this situation, is make sure that, again, that I'm staying tight because I don't want this arm to get out. Now I'm going to reach over as far as I possibly can, grab his gi cloth here, or his lat if it's no gi, and start scooting around to the back. Okay, so I'll release, staying tight, still my shoulders tight, getting to my elbow, I'm hugging him tight, pulling myself around, okay? Then I'm going to try to work this foot in or this hook. So as I come around, I'll try to work this foot in and take the back. However, if I'm only able to get the initial hook in and he blocks, okay, we're still safe. Now we're in a back control position. Either or is fine. And at this position, I will work on getting rid of this arm and try to get this hook in. So basically what I'm going to do is take a move that went from a submission to take his back, and then from here, I have a whole mess load of things I can do. I have chokes, submissions from his legs to his neck to everywhere. So it's a good option for us. So once again, same thing happens. I'm going to avoid the choke, grab the back of his head, push the tricep, release my hips, stay tight. I realize I'm not going to get the choke. It's too big. So now what I'm going to do is grab him tightly, remove this hand, try to get to the elbow. So I come up, staying tight the whole time.
Now once I grab his body, whether like I said it's his gi or his lat or whatever, I'm going to slide this leg down, keep pulling myself, staying tight the whole time. So essentially what I've done is entered one hook if I was taking the back, and I'm trying to work the second hook in to his back here.
Okay, same thing, different angle. Okay, whether I'm going for the choke or just going for the back. I'm here, sliding him over, staying tight. I realize I'm not going to get the choke, so I grab his back here, release this arm, try to get to my elbow. Okay, staying tight the whole time. I slide the back hook across, back leg. Now I reach over and attempt to get both hooks in and take the back. Okay, so back at the beginning we were talking about posture. So another posture that a person will do is sitting back. So when they're sitting back, like I said at the beginning, there's different ways I can attack. So the most common way, of course, is having a gi collar. If they have a gi on, you attack the collar. So that's what we're going to start with, a really, really basic gi choke. And then from there we'll move on to a little bit more difficult stuff, but still very basic stuff. So the best way to show a gi choke, I'm going to face the opposite way, so you might not hear me, but I'm going to talk as loud as I can. On this attack here, again, his posture's up. So most people are going to posture up like this. So in order to control his posture, the most common way that people do in a gi is they're going to grab here and insert their hand as deep as they possibly can. So that's going to allow me to control his upper body. Now the reason that I want to do this besides submitting him, besides choking him, is that it makes it a little bit more difficult for him to pass my guard. By sitting up, he's trying to stay away from me, and he's trying to apply as much pressure to my hips as he possibly can, and of course to the back of my legs. So by applying pressure to his collar, I make it difficult for him to apply that same pressure to my legs. So that's number one. Then number two, of course, since I have this position, I want to try to attack and get a choke here. Okay. So my basic collar choke from here, my first submission that I want to use, I want to make sure that I get this hand as deep as I possibly can because I'm going to use the anatomy of my arm. I want to get the bony part of my arm on the side of his neck. So, for example, if I were to grab his collar like this, or a different kind of grip, and not have the correct grip in, might get the meatier part of my forearm against his neck, which would impede the choke a little bit. So I'm trying to get this as deep as I possibly can, so the bony part near my thumb is against his neck. Then for a really basic choke, what I want to do is release this leg to his hip, apply a nice angle, and if you notice, a lot of his material came up, so I'm going to reach as deep as I possibly can. Again, I'm getting some bone of my wrist against his neck, so I come in here. As I get this choke here, I'm going to come back to normal and apply pressure downward. Okay? So there's a lot of different ways that you can choke somebody. So this I find is one of the more successful chokes with the angle. It applies a little bit more pressure. So again, when I release my hips here, all I'm doing is trying to get a better angle here. So I release. Now that I can reach back here, very tight. What I do right here, okay, is I pull to my chest as tight as I can. I keep my elbows tight. I'm trying to essentially is to pull him right to my chest right here. So I pull, come back to the center, and that applies the choke. You'll also see some people choke just straight up. I could be here, and I could take this arm, slide it as deep as I possibly can, touching my fingers behind his neck. Okay. Good trick to do that is to kind of lift with the first arm. That loosens them up a little bit, allows me to get in deeper, then finish the choke the exact same way. Okay. One thing to note about gi chokes is if my initial hand is in here, if I go underneath my own arm, then I'm going to go palm up. If I go over top my own arm, I'm going to go palm down. Okay. Again, that's just because we're using the anatomy of my arm, and I'm trying to get the bony part of my arm against his neck. So when I'm underneath, it allows me to get these two hard bones on his neck. However, if I go over top and try to do the same thing, which as you can see is nearly impossible, but if I did that, now we've got the meaty part of my forearm against his neck. So most likely I'm not going to get a good choke. So if I'm doing a basic collar choke, I'm sliding here, trying to get as deep as I can, finishing off down here. And again, the key to this move is lifting. So if we tilt his head a little bit, I lift right here. Okay? that allows this hand to get in deeper. So basically my fingers are touching in the back, and I follow through here. Okay? If he blocks this avenue off, as I went for the choke, he brings this hand up, right? Just blocking my hand, I can't get in here. That's when I would switch and come back to here, boom, and finish a choke here. So that's your basic collar choke. A very basic move, but if you're going to use the posture control on the bottom where you have your hand in, it's very essential to know. Okay? So now we'll move on to a little bit different postures, kind of the same theory, except I don't have my hand in. So let's start from here. Okay, and this one, again, adjusting his back, backwards posture. As I said, the reason, as we just saw, that people have a backwards posture and upright posture is so that I can't choke them, especially if you're in a gi. No gi doesn't matter as much. You can do like we did before, where the guy has a wrestler hold on you, or wrestler posture. He doesn't have to worry about being choked, so therefore he can keep a little bit lower posture. But when you have to worry about getting choked, you have to keep a more upright posture, such as Justin has. Oftentimes, if he keeps a really good posture from the get-go, especially if you don't have long arms, it's going to be hard to get a deep grip on this collar. So if I can't get a deep grip on that collar from the get-go, let's say that every time I try to sit up, he pushed me back down or something, then I'm not going to have that control. So therefore, I would more watch his hands, maybe have a wrist control so that I could do something different. However, what I'm going to do now is really open up a set of moves and attack this position. So knowing that he's sitting back, the perfect thing to do is a good sweep. We call it a hip bump, also known as a hip heist or a Mountaineer Sweep. So what I want to do when he's in a backward posture to take advantage of this situation is sit up. So what I'm going to do is sit on an elbow. You don't sit straight up. We pick a side. Pick this side, okay, and I sit on my elbow. So we call an elbow sit up. So at this point, now that I got some good leverage and posture, what I'm going to do is reach over his tricep here. But as you notice, as I do that, I lift up my hand here. It does two things. It allows me to get higher on his tricep. It also is going to give me a little bit more leverage. Okay. So with this leverage here, what I want to do is control this arm, basically so he can't catch himself, and sweep him that way. So in order to sweep him, I release my legs, come up, my butt is off the ground, gives me a little bit more leverage. Now I'm going to hold his arm so he can't catch himself and just turn over here. Okay, so that's our basic hip bump sweep. Okay, so there's a couple different versions of this hip bump, hip heist, whatever you want to call it. And they all involve the same theory, but you apply it a little bit different. So again, I'm going to sit up and attack this tricep. Let's say that when I sweep him, he still gets his arm out. So I'm going, put your arm out, Justin. He's catching himself. At this point, I'm still safe. He's caught himself, but I just suck that arm in and finish with mount. Now another version of this sweep is something that we do with our legs. Now let's say that I was with somebody that was a lot larger than Justin is, and I needed a little bit more leverage, or I wanted to be a little bit faster. What I would do in this case is when I stood up and went to the sweep, posture back. So again, it's from posture back. I'm going to go this direction so that you can see my leg. As I go to his tricep, I'm going to bring this leg back slightly. So I come up here and I bring this leg back. So what this is going to allow me to do is drive more, especially like I said, if this guy's big. If I come into resistance at this point, a lot of times when I grab here, the guy will chest to chest me and try to drive me back down. So as he drives, now I have this leverage back here, and I can drive forward. So that's a very good sweep that you use almost all the time when somebody has backwards posture. As you see, not only is it a great sweep, but you'll end up in mount in a very dominant position. So in my opinion, anytime a guy postures backwards, it is a sweep that you should always go for. The thing that you can always attempt, because it'll lead to other things. And some of those other things are a few of the things that we'll go over right now. If he reacts to my hip bump and he won't allow me to do that, let's say there's a few people that have such a good base, and like I said, nothing's 100%. So let's say that maybe I went for the sweep, okay? He's starting to push back on me a little bit, so we're not going anywhere. Like I said, especially if he's big, or if my technique is bad, unfortunately, and I can't sweep him. Well, I don't give up this position. I have a few things that I can do from here. So probably like the first, most basic thing is I'll look at this arm right here. So I see it's like wide open right in my face. So I decide I'm going to go for what we call a Kimura. So in order to do that, I'm going to just overhook this arm right away and go to his wrist with my same side wrist. So as I get there, I'm going to connect my hands wrist to wrist. Okay? As I'm here, what I want to do to finish this Kimura is pretty much make sure that this arm doesn't come close to his body, or really even my leg, because I don't want him to grab something and protect him from the move. So I try at this point here to fall on my chest or fall on my side here, keeping his arm out wide. Then immediately, I'm going to finish the move by rotating my hips and getting at a 45 to 90 degree angle. So I'll go here and apply pressure down on his shoulder. Okay. So, like I said, the fine points of this move are that when I connect my hands together, I want to make sure that I don't bring his hand close to either my leg or his leg, because if I do, he'll grab some material, right? And it's going to be a little bit harder to finish, right? So we can pretty much avoid or try to avoid that stuff by falling a little bit outwards and keeping his arm out wide and finishing in this direction. Now, important things to notice about my legs here is that this one was here, but when I finish the move, it comes high on his back. The reason I do that is because if I don't, I allow him an escape route. So let's say that I went for Kimura without bringing this leg over. What Justin will do immediately is just do a forward roll so that he can get out of the move. So I'll apply pressure, and then I lose the position. So it's really important that you bring that leg over to avoid him from doing that somersault or that rollout. Okay? So that's our basic Kimura. All right, we'll do one more angle here. Let's say that I went for the hip bump. Okay, I didn't get it. He's applying pressure back. I'm going to drop here, roll to my side, out, and away. Now at this point, I'm putting a lot of pressure on his arm. If I want to make it a little bit more difficult on him, I can bend his arm in and apply it up. It doesn't take a lot of pressure to put stress on that joint. So that's our basic Kimura, but as we keep saying, nothing's 100%. So we have to have multiple moves from that position. And then also there's a lot of things, different directions we can go depending on what he does. So for example, like we talked about for a second ago, let's say that he got a hold of my pants, or his pants for that matter. I went for the Kimura. I didn't go out wide enough, so he got a hold of my pants. So now the first thing that I can try is to notice like where the pressure of his hand is. When you grab how Justin has, which is not wrong, I mean it's the way that you're going to grab, his weakness is away from his finger. So if he grabbed a material like this, I'm weakest that way as opposed to this way. So I would look at that and attack that. If I keep pulling his hand in, I'm pulling him towards his strength. Most likely I won't break his grip, even if I'm stronger than him. So a lot of times what I do is just make sure I have a good angle, go away, and try to break his grip, then come back. So I'll go here, break the grip, and then finish the Kimura. Okay? So that's your first option. Go ahead and hold there. So if he's holding here, my first option always is try to break the grip, but break it correctly. Don't just pull here. If I just pull here, probably not going to get it. So I got to go up, finish the Kimura this way. My second option is if he's holding my pants here, I'm unable to break his grip. Like I said, nothing's 100%. I tried, didn't work. Is to keep this in here. Now there's a couple different, we're going to do what we call a Kimura sweep. There's a couple different ways to do this. The way I like to do is just lock his hand in place. If I'm able to reach, I'll lock around here and come to my elbow. I'm basically going to do the same thing we started with, a hip bump. What's different is now I have his arm locked in place and his posture is a little bit different. But I have such a strong sideward angle now that it's going to, I don't have to have that exact posture. So I will bring my leg back a little bit farther to give me some extra oomph when I go to sweep. But I have this arm locked in and I just go and finish him out. Same thing, guys. Okay. When I go up here, hip bump, I realize I'm not going to get it. Go for Kimura, try to finish it. He grabs my pants. I realize, I try. I can't get that. I'm just going to take this arm overhook his hand, come to this elbow. So now I got him locked in here pretty good. Take this back leg, drive it, and I'm going to roll and do a basic hip bump. Okay. Sometimes you don't have to come to your hand like this, but if you do, it gives you a little bit more extra leverage. So when I come up here, I'll roll through, and we're into mount. So a lot of times when I go for this hip bump, maybe his arm's not exactly out where I like it. Or either or, I just decide to do a different move. Like if his elbow's in here, clearly it's going to be hard to get to Kimura right here. But I have other things I can do. So what I would like to do from here is I notice his head is right against my body. I can wrap around and go for a guillotine choke. Now the thing is that everybody misses on this guillotine choke is they go for the choke and then they just drop back to guard and try to finish it. The problem is I'm not going to have enough space to connect my hands. So, for example, this is the wrong way to do it. They'll wrap the guillotine, drop back to guard. As we noticed when we landed, we're pretty tight right here. It's going to be hard for me to get this hand in here. Even without Justin blocking around, he's just being a dummy for me. It's still hard to connect my hand. You know, and if he was going live, he'd probably hug me and get in here. Now, even if I tried a different version of a guillotine, say like the overarm guillotine, it's still going to be very difficult to connect my hands. So what we want to do is a little trick. We're going to scoot our hips out real quick. That gives me the space that I need. So as I create this space, what I want to do here is there's a few different ways you can finish a guillotine. Like I said, we're just doing really basic stuff, so we'll just stick with some basic grip controls. I can make a fist, pull on my fist, or I can keep my hand like a knife and pull on that. That's all we're going to do. We're going to keep our hand like a knife, make sure that I get that bone on there. I'm going to reach over my hand and grab the back of my hand. Okay? And then when I get to the back, when I get to my back, I'm going to pull. The couple good things that I want to do here once I've connected my hands is I drop back here, I connect my legs again. So this way I can do a push-pull motion that's going to make it really hard for him to get out of. So I'm going to pull with my upper body, and I'm going to push with my legs and try to spread him out. So to finish the move, I will be here. Okay, so that's your basic guillotine. All right, so backwards angle here is, again, his arm's in, so I go here. Realize that I'm not, that I need to guillotine, so I'm going to sit my butt back. The part I say everybody forgets, lock my hands, okay, and finish. All right, one more angle. So that's our basic guillotine submission, okay? So now we already have a hip bump, Kimura, and a guillotine without counting the sweeps. And we'll go from there. Like I said, again, like we keep saying, everything's not 100%. So a lot of times I will miss this guillotine. You'll run into some people that are very hard to choke. Or, again, maybe my technique wasn't the best. So either I skipped that step and I fell back without scooting back, or just didn't choke him. So I have to have a different option there. And the option we're going to go to is something we call a crucifix. What I'm going to do is switch it to what we call a crucifix sweep. All right, and the reason I'm going to do this is because an actual crucifix is illegal in a lot of competitions. It's cervical crank. So without MMA is perfectly legal. A lot of grappling competitions, it's illegal. So we'll do the sweep part, but I will go through the actual submission just so you understand. So I'm going to go for my basic guillotine here. All right. As I fall back, again, either I made a mistake or the choke didn't work, but let's say that I made a mistake. Got too anxious for the guillotine, I wrap the neck, and I just fall back. All right? I can't connect my hand. I'm not going to finish the choke. So this position here, what I'm going to do instead of giving up the entire position is reach this hand through. Okay? It's very easy to reach through. I reach it through. At this point, I got a few different options. If I was going to do the crucifix, like I said, that's illegal in most grappling competitions. I would reach this hand through his other arm and just pull and push his body away and twerk his neck down. So I apply a cervical crank or neck crank, which obviously that's why it's illegal in grappling competitions, so we don't hurt people. However, in MMA, it's completely legal, so it's a move that you can do. But let's say that we're in a grappling competition, so I can't do the cervical, or I can't do the crucifix, but however I can do the sweep. So I will sweep through here, or I'll insert my hand through here. At this point, I have a few different options. I can bring this through, not neck crank them and sweep them. However, you don't want somebody at a competition to stop you and say, oh, don't do crucifix, even if you're not trying to. So what I like to do is just connect my hands right here. I'll just do a basic palm-to-palm grip. In theory, especially if it's a guy that's just in size, what I can do is just pull and drive him that way for a sweep. So I will pull here, drive over, and take him out. Then at this position, I'll release his head, again, because I don't want to apply pressure on his neck and get in trouble. And I'll have a basic sweep to mount. Okay. However, if Justin's a little bit bigger, if it's not working, so if I went here and here, and I pulled and it didn't work, we're going to have to do something extra. So if that's the case, what I do is I scoot my hips out and I insert my foot the best that I can inside here. Okay? So it's here, slide this through, pull him to create an opening, scoot my hips out, take my foot, slide it on the inside, then I'm going to create an elevator with my foot, and I'm going to pull and kick with my foot. And over. That's what we call a basic crucifix sweep. So let's do one more angle. I go for my basic guillotine here. Realize I can't get it. I screwed up. I slide my hand through, grab hand to hand, pull as hard as I can, exposing his body here. If I can't get him over, scoop my hips out, slide this foot on the inside. Once it's on the inside, I'm going to keep pulling and kick. Sweeping him over and taking him out. So there we have our basic set from closed guard where he sits back. Gives us quite a few moves to do, and that's the most common posture that you're going to run into. That's why we did a little bit more time on that position. Most people don't want to get choked, especially in a gi, so they sit back. They're going to be very, very careful. They're going to make it hard for you to get to the collar. So if all those avenues are closed off, it gives us an excellent opportunity to attack all these moves. One thing I want to go back and cover that I was thinking about is what we call a flower sweep. And the reason I want to go back and cover it is because it's in so many positions. It's on mostly failed arm bars or arm bars where people block. You know, obviously they're trying to defend the arm bar. But it's also available on the upright posture that we're talking about right now too. So we just want to make sure, because it is a really complex move to be on a basic tape, that we cover it and we get it down correctly. So in order to do what we call a flower sweep, what I need to do is grab here, okay, dive underneath the thigh, just like I was doing the underneath thigh arm bar. The difference is I really need to get my head as close to this knee as I possibly can. The reason I need to do that is I need to completely release my hips so that I can properly sweep him correctly, no matter what size he is. So what I'm going to do is release my hips this direction, trying to get the back of my foot and calf into his armpit and tricep here. This leg I use as a pendulum. It creates momentum and allows me to sweep him. Okay. At the same time, just as Justin did, since we're hanging out, if I let go of this arm, he'll set it down there and catch his balance. So I never need to let go of that arm. Okay. So it needs to stay in here so that I can get the sweep. As I release my hips, I want to shoot him as far out away as I can. No matter what the size, if I do the technique correctly, it doesn't matter. If I took Justin and just try to shoot him this way, it would not work against a big person. So I need to get a correct angle, get my head close to his knee, shoot this direction. At this point, I have a few different options. Once he's swept, I can go for the arm bar, or I can tuck this leg and continue to mount. So I'll do both for you. That will be the arm bar version. As a little bit faster version, I come across, come to mount. Okay, so basically what I'm going to do here, again, is grab this arm, go underneath the thigh, release my hips, okay. Use this leg as a pendulum so it swings here. As it gets back here, I need to tuck my leg. So I'm going to go here, tuck my leg, come up and mount. All right. So again, different body types. So now when Charles comes in as opposed to Justin, as Charles comes in as opposed to Justin, it's important that I do the technique 100% correctly because, again, if I did everything the same and try to push him across my body, he's not going to go anywhere. He's too big. So I have to have everything correct. So we're going to really break this down in detail on this one. So, again, I'm in closed guard. Grab his arm so later he can't catch himself. I'm going to dive underneath here. Get my head as close to his knee as I can. Release my hips. Okay. Back of my leg looks facing that direction. Back of my calf's on his tricep armpit. At this point, I really need to use this as momentum because he's big. Again, I'm not pushing that way. I'm trying to drive him across towards his head here. So release, use this for momentum. Over we go. So as you see, Charles is big, but I'm not using any extra strength. It's all technique. I'm getting my hips out. I'm using my body as leverage. I'm using my body for momentum. And he goes over quite easily. So again, here, release. There's the sweep. If a guy gets frustrated in your guard, he's probably going to stand up. So depending on how he stands, there's different ways he can stand up. We're not really going to cover all that. We're just going to cover some basic moves from there. So I'm going to put Charles in my guard because he's the perfect example of a guy that would stand up. The reason being is he's strong, he's big, so he'll think or feel like, and he's right, that if he stands up, it's going to be hard for me to keep my legs locked around him, and he can just push my legs down. Again, that's not wrong thinking, but I got to be able to counter that. So Charles will go ahead and stand up. Okay. Second he does this, I do not have to keep my legs locked. Okay. In fact, I don't want to. I need to avoid getting cemented. I need to avoid getting leg locked. So what I want to do is immediately attack the back of his ankles, drop my guard, and put my knees together. Okay. So my knees come together like this, and it provides so he can't go straight back into my guard again. I hold the back of his legs here. Very important, too, that my pinkies touch the ground right behind his heels. So that's going to prevent him from stepping back as I apply pressure with my knees now at him. So I'm going to apply pressure here, push with my knees into his chest. Here. Okay. So that's our back sweep. Now here, however, I have a sweep, but I haven't completed the move. If at this point Charles would squeeze his knees together, he'd make it very difficult for me to get through, and potentially he could bring his leg back and just kind of pull himself back up to guard. Keep going. Just go away. And we'd have to restart. Okay? So it's really important that even though I get the back sweep, I finish the move. Okay? So this time I'll finish it all the way through. So Charles will come up and stand up. All right? And drop my hands to the back of his heels. Drop my guard, release it, knees together, a sweep. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is go in an angle. So my left hand is going to go to the ground. This hand will go to his collar or the back of his head, depending on what I can reach. Okay. So I'll come here. I'll bring my other leg back, pull myself to mount, and create a good mount here. Okay. This way you can see my knees a little bit better than what I'm doing here. So he'll stand up. So the first thing I want to do is go to his heels so he doesn't go anywhere. Drop my guard, my posture, knees together. That provides a good base against his chest and his belly. I'm going to go high up on my shoulders so that I can get good pressure. Just this is not enough to knock him down. It's high up on my shoulders. Here he falls. Immediately, you notice I'm going up on my hand, okay, reaching up to grab a collar, head, whatever I can reach. Pulling myself up to mount and securing mount. So that's our basic back sweep when a guy stands up. Now the last thing I'll cover is not necessarily a move per se. It's depending on how he stands up. So let's say that he stood up, but his posture, he's still pushing on my chest. So go ahead and stand up. Yeah. So a lot of people do this right here. They'll stand up, but they don't necessarily posture all the way back. Sometimes the reason he does this is he'll hold my chest, maybe bring this one back to my leg, like he's trying to pass guard, for example. When he does this, I can go all the way back to the beginning. I have an arm bar. Go underneath the thigh, release my legs, climb up to the back of his head, finish armbar. Okay? So depending on his posture, if he stands straight up, I'm going to go back sweep. Otherwise, I'll go back to the armbar that we did at the very, very beginning. So let's try one more time. Okay, so go ahead, stand up, posture low. Good. So here, if you guys notice, it'll be a little bit more difficult to do a standard back sweep because his posture's low. You can maybe still get it, but the thing that would help him survive the back sweep and to prevent it is that he's so low and he could posture forward. For example, if I went for it, he pushed his weight forward, he's a big guy, it's going to be hard to get. So, knowing this from the beginning, even before I release my legs to this point, I would go behind the thigh, release my hips, go for the arm bar. The only difference is since he's standing, I have to make sure I go high on my shoulders, up behind the head, make sure that his head is behind my knee, apply downward pressure with my foot, and then apply the arm bar by, again, popping my hips forward. So we'll do that one last angle. So he stands. Yeah, he's probably putting pressure here, trying to pass my guard there. So I attack this arm, grab some cloth, grab the elbow, either or, dive underneath the thigh, bring my legs across, make sure that his head's behind my knee, apply downward pressure, heel to the butt. That's what's going to keep his posture down. I can now apply both hands to the arm, pop my hips forward, applying a lot of pressure to his arm. At the same time, guys, make sure, since we're in a weird angle, that you're also squeezing your knees in, because the wider my knees, easier it is for him to counter, and the less pressure I put on his elbow. So if I squeeze my knees in and put here, it's a lot of pressure on his elbow. That's all of our techniques that we're going to cover from basic closed guard. These are what I consider the essential techniques. Of course, there's a lot more stuff that we can do and different avenues we can go down depending on what our opponent does or depending on how we want to attack. This is a very basic set, in fact, what I call an essential set of closed guard that everybody needs just to compete on a day-to-day basis. You're going to keep your guard closed because you're new, and you're going to be trying some really basic moves. And at the beginning, it's going to be very good for you because you don't have to open your guard very much. You're going to have some basic arm bars, some basic triangles, and some basic sweeps. All things that you'll need throughout your whole grappling career. And eventually, things will get more advanced and a little bit more difficult, but you'll always have these basics to fall back on. So it's very, very important in your entire grappling career. So I hope this helps quite a bit.